What is up, George Washington University? I'm Cole Anchewski, alongside me, my co-anchor Sean Grant, and we're bringing you another installment of GWTV's Unstoppable. I think it's safe to say that we've had a pretty eventful winter so far. A snow day, a sub-zero temperature day, then sunbathing in 60-degree temperatures, and like the weather, GW sports have been all over the place. Sean, what do we have in store for today's episode?
You were sunbathing in 60-degree temperatures?
Yeah, I was.
Well, that tan must have faded pretty quickly then. Anywho, while the winter season for GW athletics has blown by like a whirlwind, we're here to help you make sense of it all. We'll start things off the way we normally do by breaking down the recent performances of both men's and women's basketball. We'll then take a look at men's tennis and women's gymnastics with a little help from our wonderful reporting staff. After that, Cole and I will give updates on men's and women's swimming and diving, men's and women's squash, and men's and women's cross country. After that, Cole and I are going to do a deep stats dive on a player that you can't afford to miss for the baseball team this season. To wrap things up, our own Isabel Schmaler will join us out here at the desk to do a quick hot take segment. All of this on Unstoppable.
Right wing, good. Dively leaking out.
Honestly, it's kind of hard to keep talking about a team that is 7-15. Because we only have 7 wins, I'll go ahead and list them. Catholic University of America, Manhattan, Towson, Howard, American, St. Joseph's, and LaSalle. The only positive thing that I can identify from that list is that we've beat every school we've played in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. GW is averaging the lowest number of points per game in the conference, has the worst field goal percentage in the conference, the lowest number of assists per game, and is allowing the highest number of rebounds per game to opponents. In their most recent game, and arguably the biggest game of the season, GW lost to the VCU Rams. Sean, I honestly can't say much more about the team thus far. Additionally, we have Sam joining us here at the desks. So what do you guys think of the team?
You know, well, Cole, I think even looking at the record since they came back from winter break, the outlook for their season's pretty bleak. You know, 2-4 record overall in their last 6. They've got some tough losses in there to George Mason and Davidson. You know, I bring up those losses because you mentioned the loss to VCU. I think those are all kind of complementary losses because, honestly, they're games that GW could have won. You know, while you pointed out some of their struggles on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, I just think the overarching problem here is a lack of consistency. Now, I know that is often a blanket term used to try and describe a lot of things that go on at once, but I think, you know, the inconsistency here is very specific because I think that there are a couple things that could be going on. One, I think it could be that head coach Maurice Joseph just doesn't have a game plan that works with the current players on his roster, and that's why they're struggling so much. Also, off of that, I think it could be an issue of the players have lost faith in Coach Joseph, and they don't have another senior leader on that roster that they can look up to. Again, now I know we can, you know, really beat that, you know, no senior leader thing to death, but it could be something that's going on in this case. You know, one way or another, I think that head coach Maurice Joseph's going to be on the hot seat at the end of the season. Well, what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a scheme issue. It's not like they don't have any talent, but there has been kind of a talent drop-off that we've noticed. His first year, he had Yuta Watanabe, then he had Tyler Kavanaugh, both of which are now in the NBA, and he hasn't recruited well, and he hasn't put players in the right positions to be successful on his team.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going off of that, they only had one forward play in the game against VCU, and they got outscored by 14 points in the paint. And they really need either to scheme around that or they need to put more of the bigger guys in the game to kind of combat that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think something that's important to note here is that we have seen them perform well at times. You know, we saw them put up 85 points in a loss to Duquesne, 79 in a win over Fordham. You know, we've also seen them play good defense at times, only letting up 56 points against LaSalle. You know, guys, I don't know. I think they have the elements there that, you know, they could put together a complete game. I mean, that's really just why I say the inconsistency and you know, like we've pointed out now, scheme issues is why they're just not able to put it all together.
I've also been disappointed by some of the guard play. Terry Nolan Jr. was supposed to have a breakout season. He was supposed to be an offensive powerhouse. He was supposed to be putting up 15 points a game, but he's only putting up 9, and he just isn't doing what he needs to do in terms of offensive production to make sure that we're competitive with the best guards, like the guards from Dayton, the guards from VCU, the guards from the best Atlantic 10 teams, you know?
Yeah.
And when Nolan's best, he's really shooting threes and he's making them. But in the game against VCU, he didn't make a single one. He didn't even have any points. So he's really been their guy for threes the entire season, and he wasn't there.
Yeah, and I just, you look at also some of the other guards. You've got Justin Mazzulla. I just think that, we always talk about ball movement is something, again, you can just harp on all the time. But, Sam, like you mentioned, they really don't have a lot of forwards that they can really put in there to try and control the paint. And so I think, though, when they maybe try and do that with a player, like Arnaldo Toro, someone like that, it's just not going to work for them because they just don't have a height advantage. But I think off of that, the way that you got to combat that is through good ball movement, and that's just not something we've seen with, I think, Mazzulla or Terry Nolan Jr., and that's why their offense has fallen flat for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Mazzulla, the facilitator.
Right.
That was his role that he had going into the season. He took out Jair Bolden because he was good at that role last season, and now he hasn't been up to par. And we've lost one of our best talents. He's been disappointing, and overall, things aren't going well.
I mean, like you said before, you do see flashes of good things, like in some of their biggest wins, like against Fordham, and earlier in the season against Manhattan, they have some of their highest assist totals. Like against Fordham, they had 21 assists. Against Manhattan, they had 17, and they really did well in those games.
Well, and I think you mentioned that Fordham win. Justin Williams in that game, DJ Williams, excuse me. He had a breakout game. He's been a player that, they've been really looking at to get some more contributions out of. He's been on the bench for the most part, though, for most of this season and I believe part of last season. So I think So I think that it's a matter of if he's going to be a player, they have to find someone else who's going to step up, because right now within the current framework of what they have, it's just not working for them. Thanks for joining us here at the desk, Sam. The outlook for the women's basketball team hasn't looked so peachy as they've moved through their conference schedule either. Just like the men, they've lost 15 games and only managed to pick up 8 wins. Though they have fared better than the men in the start to the second semester with a 3-4 record in their last 7, their play on the offensive end has been atrocious at times, and they haven't even managed to break the 50-point mark in their last 3 losses. What's most troubling about the women's performance so far this season compared to the men is that the women did not lose as much talent as the men did last offseason. There are still 3 seniors on the roster for the Colonials, including Kelsey Mahoney and Malin Bautista, who were catalysts for GW's offense last season. The team relied heavily on sophomore forward Nila Luma through the month of January, and she had a good 5-game stretch where she scored double-digit points, but she started to trail off as they've moved into February. Now joining us here at the desk, Savannah Guida. Savannah, Cole, with 6 games left before the A10 tournament, what are some of the areas that GW really needs to focus on if they want to pick up some more wins?
Well, Sean, as you mentioned, the struggles of the women are similar to the men's, but they're not equally comparable. GW is averaging just 51 points a game, which is the worst points per game average in the Atlantic 10. And this statistic is directly correlated to their abysmal field goal percentage. The Colonials are shooting just 34.3%. And to put that number in perspective, UMass has a 3-point field goal percentage of 34.4%. Yep, that's right. UMass is making more threes than GW is making regular baskets. So that's awful. And the struggles have also been coming from the defensive side of the ball. GW is giving up the 3rd most rebounds to their opponents, and their rim protection and defense hasn't been as staunch as it normally is, which is really kind of weird for Coach Rosati.
Definitely. No, I mean, she's always emphasized defense on her teams. I mean, last year, defense was the calling card of that team. They relied last year a lot on that 3-ball. That's a little bit, more different than their general offensive struggles so far this year. But they always had a good defense. And, it is troubling to see them have some of those struggles, especially because they have players that can control the offensive and defensive glass like Nila Luma.
Yeah. And I definitely think, despite trailing off the last few games, Nila Luma has had a breakout season, and she's really been a driving force. I mean, she's a leader in so many categories, like free throws. She averages 4.1 points per game, and rebounds, 5.7 rebounds per game, and field goals, she averages 10.8 per game. So she's really a leader, and I honestly think she's having a bit of a better season than Malin Bautista, who is usually the go-to, considering she is the captain, and she is a leader on the team, but I think Nila Luma has really been the driving force here.
Yeah, and I'll kind of speak to that. Malin Bautista was supposed to be, as Sean mentioned, another offensive catalyst in yet another season. Everybody here at GWTV Unstoppable, we felt like she was going to be fantastic, but she really hasn't been up to par. She's averaging just 9.7 points per game and 3.3 assists per game, and she really predicates herself on being a great distributor, but she just simply hasn't done that.
No, and that's what I've watched her since she's a freshman, and every single year, I thought, and she made progress the last 2 seasons, and now I thought, in her senior year, it's been so fun to watch her play thus far. She really makes some creative assists. She's really just a playmaker in general, but we haven't seen that as much. And now, I was talking about how last season the calling card for that team, at least on the offensive side of the ball, was shooting threes. Now this season it looks like they're trying to go more inside the paint with Nila Luma. She's had some success, like you said, but when that's not working, when you're having a game where your sophomore forward just can't score in the paint, whether it's a height advantage, whether it's an off game, whatever it may be, that's when you need your senior point guard to take over and find other options. Even if she's not going to score herself, she really needs to try and distribute and get more people involved. And I think that's part of the issue of why their offense has been so poor, is because they just can't facilitate the ball movement.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one of the things that's really critical here is minimizing the amount of turnovers, because I know Kayla Mukwa, she's a freshman. She's had 7 turnovers in the last 2 games. She had 3 against St. Louis and 4 against George Mason, and that's so critical here. They need a handle ball movement.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be extremely careful with the basketball. And it's not like Atlantic 10 competition are any slouches. I mean, it's a very good conference, and they will get you on your worst day, and they will embarrass you. And I think that's why you've seen a lot of 40-point games. I think that's why you've seen a lot of dysfunction from the offensive side of the ball. So Coach Rosati certainly has a lot of things to figure out. Savannah, thank you so much for joining us. Now that we have entered the winter season, gymnastics is back. GW has gotten off to a good start, competing in 4 meets thus far. At the Lindsey Ferris Invite, the Colonials finished 2nd out of 4 teams and have done respectably well in their other competitions. Against the University of New Hampshire, 5 Colonials finished the day on the podium, while 5 gymnasts either matched or surpassed their season highs. The Colonials were led by 5th-year captain Alex Soas. In the meet against New Hampshire, she matched her season high of 39.050. This marks the 2nd time this season she has surpassed the 39-point threshold. To further break down the early success of the gymnastics team, our very own Savannah Guida had a chance to catch up with the athletes.
Hello, Unstoppable fans. I'm Savannah Guida, reporting from the media room of the Charles E. Smith Center, getting ready to interview GW gymnastics team captains Alex Zois and Julia McClellan. The Colonials are preparing for their upcoming meet this Friday at the Charles E. Smith Center after 3 consecutive away meets. They will be facing New Hampshire, Yale, and William and Mary. After their previous meet, the Colonials reached season-high scores on the vault and the uneven bars, but they were ultimately edged by New Hampshire. Let's go take a look inside their locker room and see how the Colonials are feeling about their upcoming meet. Julia, congratulations on your amazing meet last weekend, setting a personal career-high bars record. Coming off of that success, how do you plan to continue your personal achievements?
Thank you. I think for me, we talk about a lot in the gym, just those little changes, those little things that you can do to make your points add up in the end. So it's really just, getting the extra pointed toe and really making sure you hit all those handstands that really is going to elevate us.
Following 3 straight meets on the road, what is your energy for coming back to the Smith Center this Friday and competing on your own home floor?
It's always exciting to be in the Smith Center and to be here at home. I think our energy is definitely very excited. We always have a lot of energy wherever we go, but to be here at home and to have all the alumni and all of our parents and all of our fans here at GW really come to support us is really amazing.
What is your favorite event to compete in?
My favorite event is vault because it requires a lot of power, and I'm especially excited for this weekend because, as you know, we're having a home meet. So we start on vault, and so to be able to start on such a strong event is going to be great.
Yeah, and best of luck to you. Thank you so much. Zois, you're the only team member to compete in every single event. What motivates you to compete so often, and how do you maintain such high, consistent scores?
I think what motivates me the most is our team success. I think we, as a whole, have a lot of potential, especially in the postseason and especially with how many talented kids we have on the team. And I think that every practice, I really like to try to improve upon the day before. And then each week we have our .025 board. So from week to week, I really try to make my .025 so that when it comes down to the meet, I can give the team the best score that I can.
Zoe, so given that you are in your final season and underclassmen make up the majority of your team, what legacy would you like to leave for these girls?
I think our biggest goal this year is to qualify to nationals for the first time, and I would really love to not only have that experience with my team, but I would love to set the groundwork so that in the future our team can continue winning conference championships and qualifying to nationals, and that would really help elevate our program.
Okay, thank you. Best of luck with everything.
Though they only have one contest under their belt so far this spring season, men's tennis is off to a hot start as they beat LaSalle 6-1 here in the district. GW swept LaSalle in the doubles portion of the competition with the pairs of Zichen Zhang and Ben Barnett winning 6-4, Lawrence Sciglitano and Hanyu Liu winning 6-1, and Ryan Navarro and Dennis Afonsev winning 6 matches to nothing. GW also dominated the singles portion of the competition with all of the individuals I mentioned before, minus Sciglitano, picking up wins. While the showdown with LaSalle is the first of many in a packed spring schedule, we hope the early dominance they showed here continues as they move on, especially in their next match against crosstown rival Georgetown. And now, our own Isabel Schmaler got a chance to catch up with some of the boys on the team. Isabel?
Welcome back, GW sports fans. I'm Isabel Schmaler, and joining me today is Ben Barnett from the GW men's tennis team. So, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your match this past weekend against LaSalle?
Yeah, so it was a great way to start the season. We won 6-1, and there were 5 freshmen playing in the lineup, so it was really exciting for all of us. We were all pretty nervous, but yeah, it was great to get the first one under the belt.
Awesome. And what is it like being a freshman on the team, being that there's 6 out of the 9 players on the team are all freshmen? What's that like?
It's pretty cool. I'm rooming with 3 other freshmen on the team, so we're all a pretty tight bunch. So yeah, we get to know each other really well, just doing life together. We have classes together, so that's all pretty fun.
Awesome. And so what are your expectations going in for the rest of the season?
Well, being my first time in season, I don't really have any expectations, but yeah, we're just gonna work hard and have fun, and just be team players, and we should enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. So we'll look forward to seeing how the men's team does for the rest of this season.
Welcome back. Moving on now to men's swimming and diving, where the boys have not made as quite a big a splash in their winter meets as they would have hoped. GW did manage to perform well against crosstown rivals Georgetown and American University, who they beat 164-135 and 237-60 respectively. The win over American was especially dominant as Tommy Wolst, Alexander Oster, Dylan Arzoni, Jake Ortiz, and Peter Noctway all won individual events. Wolst was a double individual event winner, showcasing his skills in both the 100-yard breaststroke event and the 200-yard individual medley. That dominance showcased in those first 2 meets, however, did not carry over to the rest of their January competition, as the boys then dropped events against both Virginia Tech and Cincinnati by combined scores of 197-91 and 172-126, respectively. Next up on the docket for GW is the Atlantic 10 Championships, which commence later on this month. Hopefully they can channel some of the energy they had in those wins against Georgetown and American and bring home some hardware.
The women's swimming and diving team finished the season strong at Virginia Tech earlier in January. The strong team performance was marked by a great effort from Isabel Patino. Patino won the 200-yard butterfly with a time of 2 minutes and 4 seconds and finished second in the 100-yard butterfly with a career best of 56.25 seconds. Emily Zhang also had a strong showing, including a 4th place finish in the 200-yard freestyle and a time of 1 minute and 52 seconds. The Colonials now set their sights on the Atlantic 10 Championship and bringing home some hardware.
It's been an up-and-down season for men's squash, who have looked like an unbeatable team at some points and have been blown out of the water at others. Sitting in a 9-12 record overall, it's really been difficult to make heads or tails of their performance thus far. Some of their marquee wins include matchups against Stanford, Brown, Hobart, and Georgetown, who they all beat 9 matches to none. On the flip side of that, some of their toughest losses include matches against UPenn, Trinity College in Connecticut, and the University of Rochester. Those were contests they lost 9 matches to none. Next up for the boys is the College Squash Association Team Nationals event, which takes place in Hartford, Connecticut. Hopefully they can find their focus in that competition, but again, if their play so far this season is any kind of indicator, it's unclear what form the men will be in.
Much like their male counterparts, the women's squash team hasn't fared incredibly well either. However, the Colonials did beat Georgetown 9-0, which is indicative of a great season in my books. Most recently, the Colonials took second place at the first ever Mid-Atlantic Squash Championship. With regards to the season's statistics, Zo Fu Yukon has led the Colonials with 9 wins and is followed closely by Engie Emeldo with 8 wins. The number 15 George Washington women's squash team will round out the regular season in its last match against number 8 Drexel.
Lacing up those cleats and catching up with men's track and field as they've began their slew of indoor meets. The boys kicked things off with a strong performance at the Keydett Invite a few weeks ago as 3 athletes PR'd in various events. Senior Connor James and sophomore Ryan Dury PR'd in the 1 mile event with times of 4 minutes and 31.38 seconds and 4 minutes and 32.29 seconds respectively. Junior Jared Nelson also PR'd in the 200-meter event with a time of 23.66 seconds. And you know, an Unstoppable broadcast wouldn't be complete without at least one reference to Andy Weber, so here's your token plug, bud. But jokes aside, Andy performed well in the 1 mile event with a time of 4 minutes and 31.28 seconds, good enough for a 15th place overall finish. The boys then rode the momentum from that first meet into the Patriot Games, where they had 4 athletes set personal records. With such a strong start to their indoor season, we look for GW to continue the high pace they've been at the David Hemry Valentine Invite.
The Patriot Games were an excellent stage for women's indoor track to showcase some of their dominance. Seniors Bridget Priel and Kelly Stetson were superb in the women's 5K, setting new PRs by 35 and 24 seconds respectively. Additionally, senior Madison Yerke and junior Suzanne Danaheim finished first and second in the women's mile. Next, the women will compete in both the VMI Winter Relays and Boston University's David Hemry Valentine Invite. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we will be looking at men's baseball and one specific player that can make all the difference this season. Stay tuned.
All right, we'll be ready in about 5 minutes.
I'll be ready. While these guys finish up, I got a few things I want to show you. Come with me. Over the summer, we gave a lot of things a new fresh coat of paint and a new look, including the Vern Shuttle Express. Take a look at this. Oh, there you are. I thought I'd lost you. Come on with me. I want to show you the new all-you-can-eat dining option out at the Mount Vernon campus. Hey, I can charge my phone in here. I'm stuffed. You got to try the mac and cheese. It's great. I got one more stop to make. I got to get my gear for the year. Let's go to the bookstore. You can't have too many GW ties. You need to get out in your buff and blue. I want to see at all the events and the games, raising GW high. One of the things I heard from a lot of our students is we need more community space, a place to eat, study, hang out with friends. Like this one. This is one of our new spaces. We need to get going. Got to get back. This is going to be an exciting year.
And action.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Now it's time for Cole and I to take a little stats dive on a player who we think you should keep an eye on as the spring season commences. As we mentioned in the open, we're looking at a player on the men's baseball team. Specifically, we're focusing on Dominic D'Alessandro. He's a senior. Now, you know, Cole and I are going to go through a couple of his statistics from last season, and we're going to make some predictions on how he might perform this season. First thing we're going to look at is his position. Now, I think this is critically important because, as you'll see as we get into later stats, D'Alessandro is an incredible hitter. But I think it's first important to start with his position on the defensive side of the ball because that's how they work his bat into the lineup. D'Alessandro on the roster is listed as a utility player, and again, I think this is important because it shows that he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. There's multiple things that he can do. He can play in the infield, he can play in the outfield. Any way that this team is going to work his bat into the lineup, they're going to try and do it. And players like this are so critical, especially for a team that wants to contend in the playoffs, is because you need to be able to mix the lineup around depending on who you're facing as a pitcher for the other team.
Another thing I want to talk about, Sean, is batting average. Another huge part of Dominic's game is his performance at the plate. He's averaging just above 300, and it's marked by power and consistency. He doesn't strike out, he has good at-bats, which is great for a player of his position, and that's something that he's going to bring to the offensive side of the ball this season.
Now, Cole, looking at yet another statistic for D'Alessandro at the plate, let's take a look at his on-base percentage. Last season, he got on base 3.94% of the time that he was up at the plate. That also speaks to his batting average like you just talked about, but then you also factor in how often he takes walks there. And, you know, a player with an OBP that high is incredibly valuable. I sometimes also think more important than someone with a high average because you need to get runners on base in order to score runs. And that's why I think D'Alessandro, again, we talked about his position being utility, the high batting average, the on-base percentage. He's a kind of guy who's just, you want to plug into the lineup because he is going to, you know, get hits, get on base, and score runs.
Along with his OBP and batting average, we have to look at his power as well. Last season, he had 9 home runs and 47 RBIs. So not only is he a smart batter, but he's a power batter as well. His ability to drive home runs is imperative for GW this season, and it's going to be great to see what he can produce
later on. Yeah, no, and Cole, what out of those statistics, though, do you think is the most important for him? Now, you know, because we're sitting here talking about how he can do a little bit of everything, you know, kind of almost like a jack of all trades. So, but out of all of those statistics, what do you think is the most important?
I think it's OBP, especially in college baseball. I think we see a lot of success in programs who make it to the College World Series when they have runners in scoring position. That's extremely crucial, and you see from the best of them. All the SEC schools have great batters, great consistency. They get on base, whether it be walks, singles, doubles. So that's something that I really look forward to in a player, and I think he brings that to the table.
I'm going to push back a little bit, though, Cole. You know I just talked about on-base percentage, and I know I talked about how that sometimes is even more important than, let's say, batting average. But I think for D'Alessandro, the aspect of his game that's the most crucial and why he's going to have as big an impact on this team as I think he's going to is his position, you know, as being a utility player. You know, when you look, especially even in the major leagues, at players who have really good bats, I'm thinking specifically of Kyle Schwarber, you need to find a way to get them into the lineup because you can't have more than one designated hitter. And so for a guy like D'Alessandro, it would be really easy for him to just say play one position and not play defense very well. But again, like I mentioned when I first talked about his position, you know, coaches need to play around with the lineups a lot depending on the pitcher that they're facing, whether he's left-handed, right-handed, whether, you know, he's better against contact hitters or versus power hitters. Again, you need a way to get your strong hitters into the lineup, and I think that's what D'Alessandro, you know, really acting as a utility player, that's what he gives this team. That's why he's the most valuable, and that's why he's going to be fun to watch this season.
Well, thank God that he's a lot better at the positions that he plays than Schwarber. I know you're a Chicago guy, but he was an absolute awful outfielder. Let's call that what it is. But no, I completely agree. His ability to be a flex person and kind of wear hats throughout the infield, throughout the outfield, I think that's incredibly important. And again, we can see his bat consistency, a 300 hitter, that's always great to have on your team. And we talked about it. The power is an added bonus. It's icing on the cake.
Well, okay, now just jumping back to Schwarber real quickly, considering he was a catcher before he became an outfielder, I think that he was almost a plus defender in the outfield. That's just me. But then again,
plus defender who strikes out a lot.
Okay, but then once again, I think touching on D'Alessandro's power really quickly, that's the one we've talked the least about. But, you know, 9 home runs and 47 RBIs last season, that's pretty good. And I think that, you know, compared to who their other top hitter was, D'Alessandro had a lot fewer at-bats. So I think that efficiency really does come through in his statistics. He's going to be an incredible player for them this season. Definitely someone to keep an eye on. We're going to take a small commercial break now, but when we come back, our own Isabel Schmaler will put Cole and I in the hot seat for our Hot Take segment. Stay tuned.
Universities like George Washington play a critical role in hosting debate and discourse on events of the day.
The right answer is not to refuse the other. The right answer is not to say, get rid of this religion. It's not part of us. It's wrong.
I think that the story of America is the story of race. So when I think of the questions that I'm asking or the stories that I'm going to write, I'm thinking, okay, well, what are we learning about our country?
Well, I think the likelihood of him being indicted is close to 100%. There was a lot of hurdles that had to be cleared in order for that to happen.
One of the reasons that Donald Trump is president is because there is such a frustration with the way that Washington functions.
Sympathy is one thing, but empathy is the language of recovery, and it's something that's without a doubt instilled into every person that's in recovery.
It's never lead with the positive, it's always lead with the perceived negative.
Well, that is part of the problem. I mean, I actually would agree with you on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One of the things that we have seen that is most under siege in this country is the notion of civil discourse, and we here at GW, among other things, very much want to stand for that.
This is truly an only at GW moment.
Welcome back to Hot Takes. I'm your host, Isabel Schmaler. The premise here is simple. I throw out hot takes to our contestants, and they will get into heated arguments for your viewing pleasure. At the end of the game, the one with the most points wins. Let's start off with women's basketball, where their season has been shaky to say the least. Coach Rosati has been adamant about using bench players heavily during games, allowing players like Maddie Loader and Olivia Gums to get valuable time on the court. Cole, who would you like to see Rosati use off the bench on the lineup?
Well, I think it's not necessarily somebody who's coming off the bench, but I think Rosati needs to do a better job of using her core senior leaders. So Luma, Batista, and Kelsey Mahoney. I think if you get them into the right scheme and if you get them into the right positions, it's going to be smooth sailing from there. And I don't think that Batista's had the opportunities that she had last season to kind of facilitate that offense and get production from behind the line and some of those mid-range jumpers. But yeah, I think it's really focusing on those three players.
I'm going to have a slightly similar take, but take it in a different direction. I think that it should be how Rosati is using those seniors, like you mentioned. But I think that she needs to structure it around Nila Luma. At this point, especially in their careers, they're all seniors. They're going to be leaving soon. The focus shouldn't be how are we going to get them the playing time for themselves. It's going to be, if we want to win some games, how are we going to develop those younger players and put them in a position so they can succeed? And I think structuring, the roster, the lineup a little bit different around around Luma and putting Mahoney and Bautista maybe in different scenarios. Maybe it's because that Mahoney and Bautista have been playing a lot of, in the same lineups. If she changes that up a bit, staggers them. I think whatever they do, however they restructure it, it needs to be so they can facilitate more ball movement and then find ways that they can open up the paint for Nila Luma, because the issue for them now is that, teams can watch film and they know that they're going to give it to Luma in the paint. That way they can collapse their defense down. I really think they need a way, figure out a way to open up the paint for Luma.
I think I'm going to have to give this one to Sean. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about playing time, it's about winning games. So I'm going to have to give that one to Sean. But moving on to men's basketball, where the men have had an equally bad year, going 7-15 to date, and has seen mediocre outings as of late. They are currently 1-4 in the last 5 games, losing to teams like Duquesne and George Mason. Not everything is bad, however, as certain players have found success as of late, one of those being DJ Williams. He has been electric on the offensive and has had 30 points against Fordham. He has been the team's leading scorer, begging the question, has DJ Williams become GW's best player?
I'm going to say no. I think talent-wise, Terry Nolan Jr. is still the best player and most complete player on GW's roster, but he just hasn't been performing well. Now, obviously, DJ Williams has been successful, but I think in terms of guard play and ability to score, Terry Nolan Jr. is extremely good at that. And when Nolan is on, Nolan is on. He's put up multiple 20-point games, so he just kind of needs to get back on a hot streak, and I think he could do that in the later half of the season.
DJ Williams has been an enigma for me as he's been on GW's offense, or on their roster rather. And we knew he was on the team last year. We really didn't see him get that much playing time, and that was always kind of a question because you would see him in warm-ups. He would be throwing down dunks. He looks like he's an incredibly athletic player. And I always just kind of wondered maybe something that they need, GW needed in their lineup was a little bit more speed and athleticism, something that could really push the ball up and down the court in transition. Him having that 31-point game, in my mind, really does make him the best player on that roster right now because, let's face it, given how their record is, given how their season's going, they just need someone who can put the ball in the bucket. I know how talented Terry Nolan Jr. is, but he's only averaging 9 points. He hasn't found a way to score. And then, if DJ Williams is, continues to play very well, draws some attention away, maybe you can see what, you mentioned, Cole, of Terry Nolan Jr. having a resurgence at the end of the season, but I think as it stands right now, whoever's going to score is going to be the best player.
I think I'm going to have to give this one to Cole. I think that DJ Williams still has a lot to prove for himself, and I think Terry Nolan Jr. has definitely established himself as a player. But both were good points, but I will have to move on. And finally, seeing as Valentine's Day is right around the corner, it's time to discuss the age-old question, what kind of chocolates are best? While I'm personally torn between Snickers and Twix, what do you think are the best chocolates to give to that special someone?
Well, Sean, you're my special somebody, so what kind of chocolates do you like?
Nope, can't cop out of this one. Come on, I have my answer. I want to see you say what yours is.
Come
on.
You know, I'm gonna go with Snickers. I really enjoy Snickers.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with a little spin zone here. I'm going to take the question in a different direction. I'm going to say the best kind of chocolate you can get someone is a Kit Kat. And let me tell you why, okay? You have the Kit Kat.
I don't want to hear
You
this.
have the one bar of the Kit Kat, right? You can just break it so easily between two people. You hear that beautiful little crunch as you snap the Kit Kat in half, bite into it, taste the delicious wafer with the milk chocolate. I honestly don't think there's anything more romantic than a Kit Kat.
I don't like how sensual that explanation was anyway.
All right, well, I'm going to have to give that one to Sean. I mean, can't go wrong with sharing a Kit Kat with someone on Valentine's Day. So that would make Sean our winner of this segment's Hot Takes. And now it's time for the games that you just can't miss. Men's basketball will be taking on an 8-15 UMass team who as of date is 1-9 against conference opponents and played just as poorly on the road, going 1-7 on the year. That game will be on February 20th at 7 p.m. in the Smith Center. The women's basketball team will be taking on Duquesne, who's ranked 5th in the A-10s and whose road record is going to give the Colonials some trouble. That game is on February 27th at 7 p.m. Why don't you treat yourself and take a trip up to the Vern to watch the men's tennis team take on Drexel February 22nd at 11:45 a.m. Finally, check out the gymnastics team as they perform in the Brownie and Girl Scout Day meet on February 22nd at 7 p.m. in the Smith Center. Back to you guys.
All right, well, thank you very much for all of that, Isabel, though. Why don't you come over, join us here at the desk now. There is a very important announcement that I need to make. As many of you guys know, Cole is not traditionally an SMPA student, or maybe you didn't know that, but he has stuck with it when I brought him onto the show for such a long time, and he's done such an incredible job getting us to the point we are at now, helping us create the compelling content that we tried to deliver to you, the fans. But most unfortunately now, Cole needs to go and focus on actually being a public health major. That seems like more of a full-time task than doing something around here. And so, Cole, I would just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you've done for this show and the way that you've really helped us continue to progress. You're going to do incredible things as a doctor, and hey, who knows, maybe you'll be on TV again someday, discussing health policy and stuff like that.
Yeah, really quickly, I want to thank everybody at GWTV, Sean, especially you. Being a part of this show has been an incredible experience, and it's something that I'm very grateful for. Andy Weber, thank you to you as well, and everybody at GWTV. It's been great, so thank you.
Now that we got the sad part out of the way, we will miss Cole tremendously. But on to the happy part, we are pleased to announce that my new co-anchor for the rest of the spring is going to be Isabel, and we're very excited for what she's going to bring to the table. What you've seen today was just a little taste. Get ready for our next show.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to check out our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for more content, and as always, check out our website at gw-tv.com. We'll see you next time.